Jalen here, and I'm going to be inside today to show you how to replace your handlebar tape. So the tools that we're going to need to get this old ratty-tatty handlebar tape off and get some new tape on are, of course, some new handlebar tape, some electrical tape, a set of scissors, an X-Acto knife, and a hammer or any sort of blunt object. All right, let's get into it. Let's see what's inside your standard handlebar tape box. I went with the cheapest option I could find at my local bike shop, simply because this is going to go on my bike trainer, so I'm not concerned about grip as much or performance. Okay, so we got 2 rolls of handlebar tape, perfect. We got 2 bar end plugs. These are what are going to hold the tape into the bars at the end of the drops. And we got this tape here, which is going to go under our brake hoods. This is an optional thing, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So the first thing we need to do here is take off this old handlebar tape. You can see this tape is super worn out, and I probably should have replaced it even a couple years ago, but the first thing we got to do is take it off. Even before you take the tape off, you're actually going to want to pull up your hoods here. Takes a little bit of effort, but you got to pull these things up, and then you can start peeling off the tape. This stuff has been on here for a long time, so it's really gross. Again, you should replace your tape more frequently than I did, but better late than never. Just taking off the tape here. I actually got this tape from MEC. Again, cheap tape, but did the job fine. Especially if you're doing indoor training, you don't really need super high performance tape. On my gravel bike, I have some nicer tape, some physique tape, and that works quite well. You can see here that I'm taking off some electrical tape. This is caused by me not wrapping the original handlebar tape as well as it could have. So you have to go back and reinforce it with electrical tape, and that's definitely not what you want to do. So you got bar end plug, and we're gonna pop that off. See, MEC. And you can see here there's some electrical tape that's holding in this cable. We'll keep that on, and we're gonna take off the remaining pieces of tape because they don't need to be on here either. So you can see here that there is some excess residue still on the handlebars. I'm just gonna leave that on here because I don't think it's gonna really matter. A little bit of glue is only gonna really help the new tape, I think. But if you do see some white powder, which is likely dried sweat, then I would definitely wipe that off. So next, we're actually gonna prep ourselves here by peeling off 2 strips of electrical tape. And this will make our lives a lot easier further along in the process. I'd say about 8 to 10 inches is plenty. So we're gonna cut that first strip, and we'll do another one. And this is gonna be, one is gonna be for under the hoods, and one is gonna be for the top of the bars. All right, it's finally time to start actually applying the tape. So we got the tape here, and you can see that under it, there's this protective piece of paper, and that's kind of making sure that this under glue or under tape here is still sticky. So what we can do is peel back about 1 foot of this. I wouldn't recommend unpeeling the whole thing because it's just gonna maybe perhaps make this tape less sticky because it's gonna stick to random things while you're taping. And the big important thing here is we are going to tape in a clockwise direction or to the right. Another way to think of that is right handlebar, tape right, left handlebar drop, tape left. And the reason why is actually when you're holding your drops, you tend to kind of put your pressure or your weight to this side of it, to the clockwise direction. So this will make sure that you're not actually accidentally unpeeling the tape. So again, we're going to start taping this way. So before we actually start wrapping the handlebars, we're going to have to decide if we want to use this little cover piece to cover up this metal clamp here for your brakes. It's really kind of a personal choice. It's kind of an aesthetic thing, but you might be able to feel it. So a lot of people choose to cover it with this little piece. That's why it's included. I'm going to show you guys how to do it just so you can see. I think it's kind of cool, but it really is not necessary. So you're going to peel back this little tape cover thing, and then you're actually just going to kind of slap it on here like this and try to cover up that metal clamp. We'll see how well the glue sticks onto it, but ultimately we're going to want to take one out of the two electrical tape pieces that we cut off earlier and use that to just tape this into place. So pretty simple. Just going to wrap this electrical tape around. One thing is we want to make sure that the hood can still come back over. So it doesn't hurt to just test it. Make sure that your hood can lock in and then peel it back off for when we start to wrap tape around. The handlebar tape, that is. So our last big consideration before we actually start wrapping the tape is the fact that we need to have about half of the width of the tape jutting out or hanging over the end of the bar. And that's going to allow us to take the bar end plug once the wrapping is done and shove it into this hole and have it kind of use that excess tape to keep it snug in place and kind of keep it in there so it won't come out. So keep that in mind. Okay, let's finally get wrapping here. So again, we're going to rip off about a foot of this paper, and again, right bar, tape right, and we're going to keep about half of the width of the tape jutting out, or perhaps where this middle of the glue is. Let's keep that jutting out. I recommend starting the taping from the bottom, but it really doesn't matter too much. And we're going to start to tape. Now the biggest thing here is you want to keep it kind of tight, like you want to pull on it, but you don't want to stretch it. You don't want it to get too stretched out where it starts to kind of pull apart, but you do want to be tight and pretty strong with this. And then we're going to start wrapping, and we're going to follow the rule of going about the width of the glue forward. So the glue is always sticking to the tape. You can see that there. And then we're going to pull that over and keep her going. Pretty simple. Pretty straightforward, but again, you want to be tight and firm, but not too tight that you pull this stuff apart. And we'll keep her going. You can see it's kind of hard to keep the tape neat when it's just rolling off the other side, but that's not too big of a deal. I'm not going to worry about it. We're just going to kind of keep marching ahead. You know, it's just a happy little accident. And again, I'm going to keep her going. The one hard part about this is you kind of have to keep at least one hand on the bar. So it's hard to kind of like, you know, rip off the rest of that paper like I was saying, but it is kind of in the way. It's a little bit of a nuisance. And yeah. I'm gonna keep her going, and we're gonna start to get to the tough part here, which is the brakes. So you can see we're just hitting that little pad that we put in there. And now what we're actually gonna do is sometimes referred to as the figure eight. And essentially you can see here, I'm gonna bring the tape under. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to, because we don't want to leave this part hanging out, because that's gonna pop out and become really annoying and unaesthetic. So to make sure we don't do that, we're actually gonna do another full revolution under the bar here. Still on the drops. And now we're gonna bring it back around. And that's hopefully gonna catch the rest of that piece of handlebar tape. And then we're gonna come up and do what's called the figure eight. So we're coming up around the hood, and then we're bringing this guy through the top. And then we'll kind of just march ahead, trying to keep that glue the same width. And while you're doing this, you can kind of think about how far you want to bring your tape up. Sometimes you'll see some people will stop like right here, which looks kind of cool. And then some people will go all the way up. It's really kind of a personal choice. I think if you are really concerned about weight, then the less tape, the lighter your bars are. But yeah, again, just kind of preference. See here, when we get to this corner, it becomes a big concern because this is starting to flare out. And this is probably the easiest thing for you to have pop out after, a few months. So the best way to combat that is to make sure you wrap this corner extra tight. So you can see here the width is a lot less than this one, but it's gonna help keep that from popping out. And again, gonna do the exact same thing. Exact same thing. And then, okay, so I kind of overdid it there, as you can see, because we ran out of tape. So we're gonna come back and perhaps not take off quite as much, but try to keep this really tight. One thing with wrapping bar tape is it's never quite as easy as it looks in videos. I know that's ironic because it doesn't probably look that easy. I'm not making it look easy because I'm not that necessarily the greatest at this, but that's kind of the point of this video, is to try to make it look a bit realistic. So you can see here, we actually only made it about here, and I'm actually okay with that. That's perfectly fine with me. I'm happy to just kind of cut this tape off here. And yeah, the next step I'm going to show you guys is how to cut this tape so that it's super well lined up. Okay, so we're in our kind of final spot here, our final finishing move. And so this is actually kind of tricky. What we want to do is try to keep this as like a nice straight finish. And the way to do that is to take your X-Acto knife and actually mark where this final line is, but on this piece of the tape. So we're gonna come in and mark that. And make sure your X-Acto knife is, of course, locked. And you just need to make like a little indent here. Kind of like that. And then you're gonna take your scissors, come back, and actually cut this guy straight. So we're gonna snip off a huge piece here. Try to keep it nice and straight. That's not super straight, but straightish. Again, not super pro, if that hasn't been obvious yet. There we go. Okay, so we got our kind of straight line here. And the last thing we're going to need to do is take our piece of electrical tape. One thing to note is it's actually preferred to have your tape end at the bottom, but it just didn't really work out that way. So I'm not going to really stress too much about it. And we're going to kind of get this tape to be in line with the bar tape. So that's electrical tape in line with the bar tape. And then we're just going to try to wrap this nice and tightly. And the preferred option here is to actually have the tape end at the bottom. So we're just going to use our scissors to cut off the last little bit of tape there. And then we're going to make sure it's nice and flat when we do the last kind of like push in there. And we're more or less done for this side. Now the last step for this end of the bars is to put the bar end plug into the bar end. And so one thing I actually discovered was this bar end does not fit into my bars. You might come across this issue. I don't know if that's common or not, but fortunately it's not that big of a deal because I still have the original bar plugs that I had before. You can see it's like a little dented and kind of not looking great, but I don't really care, so that's okay. And what we're gonna do is try to fold in the excess bar tape that we had. It's kind of hard to work with because this is, brand new tape. We're gonna try to fold it in and then just mash this plug in there. So this might have been a case of me not putting in enough excess tape, but let's see what happens. Okay, so you can see there's a little bit jutting out, so I'm actually gonna pull that out and try again. It gets pretty annoying when the tape comes out of your plug randomly. Okay, so I'm gonna pull this all the way out and start again. All right, hoping this is gonna go a bit better. Come on, there we go. And this is where you can come in, take that hammer or blunt object that I was talking about at the beginning and hammer this thing in. So you can see there is a little bit of tape coming out. I'm actually not gonna really worry about that. I'm not that concerned, but some people might get annoyed by it. And then we're gonna try to get that thing in there. Don't want it to pop out. It's also really annoying when it pops out. And there we have it. So here we have the bar from this view, and one of the last things we're gonna do here is flip the hood back over to make everything look nice and tidy and clean and nice. And you can see, look at that nice new bar tape. Here you can compare the new tape to this old gross tape. I think it's going to be a huge step up. One thing to note is there's some residue from the old tape here. I'm going to try to wipe that off because it doesn't look that great. But again, it honestly doesn't really bother me that much either. This was caused by the old tape coming up a lot further than this tape. But yeah, I'm going to do a quick wrap of this side of the bars. And the big thing to note there is I'm going to tape to the left because this is the left side of the bars. And if you remember, on this side, I taped to the right. All right, so let's come back when I'm done with that. So here you can see I got the new tape on both sides of the bars, and that looks pretty clean and looks like a huge step up from what I had before. So yeah, hopefully I'll be able to push some watts now. All right, I hope you have success replacing your handlebar tape and taking on future simple repairs at home yourself. If you've made it this far, I'd really appreciate it if you went and hammered that subscribe button. And thanks, and we'll see you soon.